New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
And hello again, dear ones. Rev Brz with you over here.
Rev Z right here.
Rev Shad right here.
And this is New Thought today for July 23rd, 2024. That means it's 2 o'clock on the Mountain Time Zone. I'm so grateful that you are with us here today. Thanks for joining us. And my co-host Rev Z and I are grateful to welcome Rev Shad Groverland all the way from Lee's Summit, Missouri. And Shad's you're not a stranger to the program. We had you with us last August, and it's less than a year. So I think we probably committed to having you back sometime soon. And if it's less than a year, I think that counts. So welcome aboard.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me back. And it takes about a year to be able to handle you two again. So I think that's why it takes so long. I'm just kidding.
Yes, we are an acquired taste. So thank you everyone for joining us. And we're going to jump right into it. So Shad, tell everybody out there that are watching a little bit more about yourself. What do we need to know to get started in the conversation today?
All right. Well, let's see. The long and short of it is I was born and raised in Unity, which is a branch of New Thought. So kind of just raised in these teachings from birth. Blessed to have that experience. I became a minister myself, ordained in 2016 through the Unity Urban Ministerial School. My first ministry was in the Unity of Las Vegas, in Las Vegas, Nevada. And then moved back to Unity of Boulder to minister with my sister and my father and my mother and my wife and my brother-in-law and as many family members we could pack in the building. And we did that. And then I joined the Unity Worldwide Ministries Board of Trustees. I served on that board for 2 years. Then I was stepped off the board and applied and became the CEO of Unity Worldwide Ministries and moved out here to Unity Village. And been living at Unity Village ever since in our little tiny home, which I'm in right now. And so here we are. Now, well, I guess I should get to the latest thing. So I was released from that position a couple of months ago. I assume I'm still in the position. Released from that position, and my wife and I just started discerning what were next for us. And we are going to launch a new church here in Lee Summit. So that's the full rounded story right there.
Nice.
And we want to hear a lot about the new work that you're going to be doing here in this new church. But let's definitely address the elephant in the room, as it were. It seemed like a rather surprising. Well, you're in a tiny house. It seemed like a rather surprising announcement to many people that I know and I speak with in the New Thought movement. It felt like you were ensconced, let's say, you were anchored into the Unity Worldwide Ministries, the headquarters there, and doing some great work and really getting out in the world. And it felt like it was a quick surprise maybe to some. And so if you would share a little bit more about your departure from that position as executive director, I believe it was, correct?
I started out as executive director, and then the position was changed to CEO after a little over a year being in the position. Back to the title it used to be before coming into this. So the experience was a wonderful, difficult, amazing, fruitful experience. All the emotions wrapped into it, and fundamentally coming into the position I was on the board of trustees before coming to the position, so I had worked with the board of trustees a lot. And on the board of trustees, we really had a vision for getting a clearer direction for the organization. If you don't know, Unity Worldwide Ministries specifically works with the ministry churches and centers of about 650 that there are around the world in Unity. It has the seminary, the school, so it works with UWSI, which is the internal seminary. It also works with Unity Urban Ministerial School out of Detroit, which is our sister seminary. So the two schools, and then the international schools. So it does all the licensing, ordination, credentialing, all that sort of stuff. So that's specifically where Unity Worldwide Ministries sits. And as the CEO, you're overseeing the central office and all the branches of the organization that you have. So coming into that, the board of trustees really wanted a more clear direction for what we're doing, a clear identity of who we are, who our members are, all that sort of stuff. So coming into position, that was kind of what was handed to me, get going on. So I started traveling a lot to the various ministries we have throughout the United States, and was just beginning to schedule traveling overseas to start visiting our ministries overseas. And as we traveled, we realized increasingly we were seeing less and less of the specific work of Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. And what you'll notice over time, or what we noticed over time in the ministries, is that you really kind of have two camps of what Unity is in Unity Worldwide Ministries. You have somewhat is the traditional Fillmorian camp. And if you don't know, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore started Unity back in 1889. So you have this sort of traditional Fillmorian camp, which is kind of aligns with the term practical Christianity, or you might call it New Thought Christianity. And it's much more Bible-based, metaphysical Bible interpretation, and it's very Christian in how it shows up in many ways, shapes, and forms. And then you have somewhat of a more New Thought, more New Age influence, more universalist style of Unity, which it talks about the Bible some, but more also talks about other religions, other faiths, more interfaith concepts. So there's sort of these two camps evolving out of Unity. And as I was traveling, as we're doing this work, I found myself falling more into the traditional Fillmorian camp, and really recognizing that that was where I think UWM was best situated to do the work that it does, and that Unity World Headquarters, a sister organization, was really situated to do another form of Unity, and that it kind of worked well in that way, that you could have kind of a traditional camp of UWM, and you could have this new emerging camp of Unity World Headquarters. But at the time, you really recognized a lot of the ministries were already moving into this new camp that was a more expansive recognition of other faiths, and including other faiths in the experience on Sunday and throughout the week. And increasingly, it was becoming clear that where I had a vision for the organization, the staff had a vision for the organization, the original board that hired me kind of was setting the tone for the organization, wasn't necessarily where the organization was going anymore, and where the current board was going anymore. And that it was probably time that me and the vision I had didn't really align with that direction anymore. And eventually I was released from the position. So we just kind of were going in different directions, and no hard feelings, really blessed the whole process as it went down. Still love everyone in Unity, and just recognize that, I might not be a good fit in that position anymore for where I was going.
One of the things I love about New Thought is people like to make more out of some moves than is really there. It's easy to go to those questions, but the principles teach us to remember there's always something higher, something more evolved, something happening that's calling us to our greatness and taking us to a greater expression of who we've been. And having been on the end of an experience where it appeared I was fired or let go of, or just when we look at it in retrospect, or even and just from the moment, it's always in the highest and the best of both parties when something like this happens, and there's a separation, if you will. I know that these are we don't seem to have the best terms to describe these experiences in ministry sometimes until after the fact. So grateful. Thank you.
Yeah.
That was, I think, a great explanation.
I completely agree with
and
what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think, one thing that we all can attest to, the universe is continually evolving. So to get pigeonholed in one particular place or one particular way of doing things often lends itself to a bumpy ride, right? And so I applaud that effort, because as institutions of spiritual learning across the board are experiencing now, what used to draw people is not drawing people anymore, because we got new people, we got younger people, and they're looking for something different. Their idea of spirituality, their idea of being in community is a lot different from the traditional way it's been shown. So we have to experiment, if you will. We have to try different ways and present different modalities to see what's working with the people.
Yeah, and I think I think there's a place for being hyper focused in what you're going to do. And the more and more people we talk to as we travel, people are looking for something specific, and sometimes they're finding something vague, and they don't really know what to grab onto when they're a part of something that's vague or not specific. And so I think, and sometimes we run into, we're trying to make something more broad to reach more people, but in that effort, it could also be making it unintentionally more vague, so less people can understand what it is, when they might be looking for something very specific. So in our travels, we're really coming to, if you're going to have a specific church or center in a specific city with a specific type of demographic in that city, it really is helpful, I believe, really helpful to understand what those people are looking for specifically. Because each area of the country has its own pockets and flavors of how they do things and cultures, and even people within those cities have their own pocket of flavors, and even the zip codes and communities around the church. So understanding what it is that this demographic is looking for, is my church aligned with, and can I be specific enough in what I do to help them find that? Because if I'm trying to be too horizontal, too vague, we're not really going to be able to find what I have to offer. But if I can really speak to specifically what they're looking for, then it helps them find.
Beautiful. Yeah, I like hearing that. It strikes me that we don't, in New Thought, a lot of effort actually has been, would appear to me, has been put into preserving archives over the last decade or more. When I first got into this movement, I didn't hear anything about the preservation of the history and the preservation of the lineage, if you will, of how we got to where we are today. And over the last decade or so, there is a lot more work happening towards preserving archives. We have obviously the Unity archives are on Unity Village. Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation just recently moved to Unity Village, and I happen to know, and it's public knowledge, the International New Thought Alliance, they're moving their Addington archives to Unity Village. And for the first time, all the major known archives of New Thought philosophy and its roots are all going to be located in the same place. And when I hear if I'm hearing you correctly, we never want to lose the message of the Fillmores, and in some ways, even how they presented it. And it's necessary for the natural outrising or birth of a church came from them in the Unity movement. It only seems right that there be a church, or perhaps, and it sounds like maybe across the country, churches that are more committed to that style of New Thought thinking, to bringing that forward again. And if I'm correct, that's kind of what you're doing here, yes?
Yeah, in a way, absolutely. I think we can try to just think as New Thought as this one umbrella, but under that umbrella, there's a lot of different ideologies. I mean, it's a very wide umbrella. And I'm not even sure anyone has ever defined where the ends of that umbrella are. They're almost infinitely expansive, because we don't like to have those conversations because it sounds exclusive. Where's the end of the umbrella? Where are the guardrails for what New Thought is? But when you look at the early days of New Thought, for me, as I read the early days of New Thought, you had these beautifully enlightened individuals sort of trying to find where their place was in the specific messaging they had. It wasn't about, can we all try to say the same thing? It was really, all right, well, this is where I resonate. These are the people I resonate with. This is where I'm going to hone my message for. So they created something sort of specific in that lane. And these lanes were parallel, and some of them were pretty close, and some were a little bit further apart, but they really had clear lanes about this is what we do. And when I look back on that from my perspective, that really is what helped these organizations grow initially, was they were very clear about where they stood. Then people around the world would go, oh, I like that lane. I want to go in that lane with those individuals. That makes sense to me. And so it's not that we want to just erase those and say, all right, we're just New Thought. I really think there's a lot of power in really understanding what's in the archives, really understanding what these lanes were and why each lane was special for what it had to offer. Instead of erasing them, let's really clarify what they were. And any one of us could step into any one of those lanes and really thrive and do well. But being clear about what that lane is, who it's for, who it best supports, and then helping make that something that really works. Because we can't do every lane at once. We just don't have the resources or the bandwidth of the people to do that. But we could do one lane really well, and then that's become known for that. And then we're hitting people from a bunch of different angles and reaching a bunch of different demographics we might have missed by trying to be all lanes at once. That makes sense with the driving analogy and the umbrella together, but there you go.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, because in an umbrella, you got all the little spokes that holds up the umbrella, right?
Right.
And when you take one of those out, the umbrella starts collapsing and you get wet, if you will.
Right.
And so
Right.
I love that because, there's the saying that everything is not for everyone, or everything is not for everybody. And so when we do that, we come up with this homogenized approach that inevitably leaves some people out and disenchant others. So in my mind, you wind up getting less than you really have the opportunity to do. And in essence, when we look at the DEIB work, right? That's what that is about. It is about being able to bring your individuality, skills, whatever, to the table and understand that there's an intersection, there's some equity, because inevitably there's some misconceptions or preconceived notions about one thing over the other, and that we have to create an environment where everything and everybody belongs. Because other than that, I'm not going to bring my good stuff. So we won't get the best of Unity or the Fillmores or the best of Emma Curtis Hopkins or Ernest Holmes. And I think that just makes sense to me.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. I mean, think about the DEIB or the IDEA, where it really is acknowledging that there have been different paths. People have been having different experiences. And if we try to just go to the top of the umbrella, we miss all this diversity of experience. We'll start talking about equality, but we're not at the top of the umbrella. We're all living these individual different spokes. And down here is where we have the really raw and honest conversations about, look, your experience is totally different than mine growing up. And your integration in this world and the type of systems that exist was different than mine. But if I just try to jump to the top of the umbrella and it's oneness, it's universal, it's all good, it's all peace, I miss that beauty of flavor of learning all the different things that are happening at the bottom of the umbrella, so that I grow and expand my own consciousness and have a better awareness of everyone else that's a part of this.
I can't wait to hear how many New Thought ministers use this analogy in the next couple months or so, because there's so many great parts of it. Even as you're describing it, if you're sitting on the top of the umbrella, well, life is under the umbrella. So you're missing it all. You're missing the actual spiritual experience of it. And so we can use the same analogy when we're talking about things like spiritual bypass. And staying on the outside and saying, no, I'm not going to look under there. I'm not going to peek underneath there, because I like it out here, and it gets messy under there. The people got bump into me under there, and I've got to connect with people, and I've got to be able to talk with people. And in some ways, it seems like the last few years, for obvious reasons, it's a lot easier for people to retreat and hide from one another and stay in their safe bubble, whether that's around their news or around their spirituality or even around when you go to the supermarket. It's easier to not these days than it is to get into the messier conversations or the more real, the more human experiences of being together. And so I think that's part of why we see this perception of a decline in churches and communities. And I think it's not about numbers. It's about the connection and the engagement. Do we create that sense of belonging in a way that allows people to feel safe and to feel respected, let's say, in these community type interactions?
I think Shad said it very appropriately in terms of resonance. Like, what do people resonate with, right? You know, some people like hiking, some people hate hiking, right? Some people like swimming, some people hate swimming. So, you know, we have to have these different activities, if you will, or these different lanes for people to find what they resonate with. Because if I'm in a place where I'm not resonating, I'm not going to get the best that I need to get. I'm not going to give the best. And eventually it's going to cause problems.
Yeah, and you look at many of the ways we structure a Sunday service or a class, using your analogy, it's like, all right, we're going to start off with a hike, and then we're not going to hike, and then we're going to swim, and then we're not going to swim. All right, well, we effectively just offended everybody. Yeah, trying to do all these different things instead of saying, all right, we're a hiking church. If you don't like hiking, we're probably not the church for you. Or we're a swimming spiritual center. If swimming's not your thing, there's a hiking church right down the road.
Yes.
But trying to do all those things, now nobody's coming because some people don't like hiking and some people do.
And this is something that Robert and I talk about all the time, is this whole idea of competition in God, right? There is no competition. So I don't need to try to be everything to everybody, trying to compete with the hiking center or the swimming center. If I state who I am, I'm going to get mine, so to speak. And the hiking and the swimming are going to get there. I love these analogies. It opens it up.
How come nobody's talking about riding bicyclists?
You're right, but yeah.
I want a bicycle church. Come on.
I'm at the bicycle church.
But and yes, we do talk about it all the time, because it pains me that in so many ways I see so many communities or spiritual leaders that are using the old school models of marketing or whatever we want to call it, that put themselves into competition with other communities. And you said it in your explanation there, Reverend Shad, right? If you're not into hiking, we know the church that is, and it's right down the road, and here's how you get to it. And I think if we can do more of that for each other, well, everybody's going to do better by that, I believe.
Yeah, and one of the reasons I got into hot water in the position I was in was I was fundamentally saying unity is a thing that the Fillmore started. And if you really don't resonate with that, look, there's CSL, there's Agape, there's all these other awesome organizations that are doing it a slightly different way that you'll probably resonate with. And I don't have to try to hard sell you that unity is the best, or we're the only one, or we're the most direct path to God. Heck, I think some of these other churches and centers are doing it really well. And so you don't have to be here. And that's okay. Like you said, and I think we're better off knowing more about each other so we can help people find what best fits for them. But if we really think we have the best, then that's not serving anybody, really. Because eventually they're going to find out there are other organizations, and they're going to go there and kind of resent you for not letting them know.
For not letting them know. Exactly.
And it gives us the opportunity to really see what I think all of these organizations were trying to do, and is find this golden thread, this different way of being in the world that supports life itself, right? And life more abundantly. And so, you know, I always use the example of you know, a person from the rainforest and a person from the desert trying to explain what God is, right? The person in the desert said God is rain. The person in the rain said, in the rainforest, said God is the sun, right? And that's the and it's like, oh no, but it's a different environment, a different place, and we're recognizing that greatness, that universality of it in different ways in different environments, and that's what we have to. I think, like you said, we have to prepare for that, because all birds don't eat the same bird feed. You know, it's just that's just the way it is. They all birds though.
It's gonna be a small booklet of analogies we could put out after this podcast.
Oh, we haven't even gotten started yet. When Elzea starts talking about things his father taught him, that's when we really are hitting third gear on the analogies. Yeah.
So we got umbrellas, we got roads, we got bird seed, we got swimming and hiking. What else did I get to here?
Yeah. So effectively, we include all of life.
There you go.
There we go. And folks, we do need to take a quick break, let a couple of our sponsors say hello, and we're going to come right back with more with Reverend Shad and everybody here on New Thought today. Please don't go away. Like, share, and subscribe. We'll be right back in just a couple minutes.
Time waits for no one. It's true. Regular registration for Celebrating Our Soul has closed. Fear not. Late registration is available. While there are limited seats, there is room for you if you register now. Go to padntg.com and register, and you will experience phenomenal live music, unique master classes, scrumptious food, and loving fellowship. Don't delay. Do it today. Go to padntg.com and join us at Celebrating Our Soul, consciously creating change. See you there.
You're invited to join us for the Convention of the Americas. Your light is my light. Come experience a bilingual international meeting of New Thought leaders on the beautiful shores of Lake Chapala, Jalisco, Mexico. With keynote speakers, Reverend Dr. Sonny Cantrell Smith, Reverend Jeffrey Ryan, and Reverend Dr. Kathy Ann Lewis. Join us August 6th through the 10th, Lake Chapala, Mexico. Learn more at conventionoftheamericas.com and register today. Your light is my light.
And we're back with more of New Thought today here on the New Thought Media Network. It is conference season, folks, and we've got them all lined up. We were at the International New Thought Alliance Congress last week. As you see, we'll be at Celebrating Our Soul in just under a week, or just over a week. That gets started, and Convention of the Americas. If you'd like to hang out with the New Thought Media Network, come on, hang out at any one of these conferences. We'll get you some stickers and some buttons and stuff. All right, back into it. So before the break, I think we were agreeing to write a book together. Or something.
That was a big leap.
We like to do that around here. So, but in this segment, Reverend Shad, we really like to kind of dig into a little bit more, and we've already started to do that, I think, in look at what you see as the future for New Thought, both in, let's say, in the Unity family and in the whole greater movement, let's call it. We could argue about this. I got people now that are saying we shouldn't call ourselves a movement. We should just claim we're a religion. And then there are others that are going to run from that word religion like it's a branding iron. Ultimately, what do you see? Where do you see the arc of this New Thought philosophy taking us? How do the various communities within New Thought make an impact on the future of humanity's experience here on the planet?
Well, it's kind of a microcosm, macrocosm question, because it's really the same questions I was looking at with Unity Worldwide Ministries. What is Unity Worldwide Ministries' place in the world? What is its function? What is its purpose? Where is it going? And that kind of easily just translates to New Thought in general. And the thing I kept running into when I was asking those questions in the microcosm of UWM is, well, what are we? What are we? And what does the world need us to be? And maybe even more meaningful for me personally is, what did our founders intend us to be? What is the intention? Because I hate to kind of just, here I am, Shad, today, I decide what we are now and I move forward. Well, there was an original intention that was set forth to kind of travel through time. What is the intention that was set there so that I can move with the flow of that intention, instead of every time a new CEO comes in or every time a new fad comes in, we kind of go this way, we go that way, we go this way, we go that way. Because really you get momentum by following the intention through. And it's going to evolve and change over time how you express it, as long as you still know what that intention is. And that intention so often comes back to, well, what is this? What is this thing we call UWM? Which translates to, what is New Thought? And so just saying, are we a religion or not? And some people really would run from that word, and some people would really embrace that word, and some can make a strong theological argument that we are that, and some can make a strong theological argument that we are not that. And so what I found, I think, is that we will shift that conversation under the rug because it's a difficult conversation. But clarity helps you move forward. And if we keep fighting clarity, or we want to avoid the conversation that brings clarity, I think that stifles movement forward. But even more importantly, it might stifle our ability to reach out into the world. From my experience, spirit moves through clarity, and spirit moves through focus. And chaos and dysfunction is not a good breeding ground for the movement of spirit. It's really through focus and clarity. So it might be that we have to have some of these difficult conversations about exactly what is this thing? What is the purpose of it? So that we can communicate that as one voice to the world. We talk a lot about one voice. We talk about communicating as one voice a lot in Unity. We could talk about it through New Thought, coming together, talking as one voice. But you can't really talk as one voice if you have 1,000 different voices saying 1,000 different things, and then even disagreeing with each other while they're saying that. That's not really one voice. How do we create what that one voice is so we can now communicate as one voice to the world? We have to get clear about why we're here, who are we, what are we doing, what was the intention that started this whole thing, so that we can get, with the old analogy, in the same boat, rowing in the same direction. But if we're all rowing in different directions, then we're just kind of either circling or we're not moving much of anywhere. So if you look at the rest of the world, it really just seems like it's time for difficult conversations. All these difficult conversations have just come to the surface. And it's sort of, Holy Spirit saying, it is time. We've brought this in front of you. Have the difficult conversations, make some difficult decisions, and be ready to move and recognize not everyone's going to agree. It's just not necessarily going to be consensus. And sometimes you have to accept it. That's just how things move. We don't always have consensus, but can we agree that this is for the greater good and move together once we've made a decision?
Yeah. And I mean, we're faced with that more and more now in terms of making a decision, critical thinking, right? That's a conversation I have a lot now, because there does not seem to be, not saying that there's not, but it does not seem to be a lot of critical thinking going on. There's a lot of reacting going on, but the idea of of taking a thing and looking at it, not to ad nauseum, but to understand when I make this decision, what am I deciding to? What am I putting my energy towards? Because if not, we find ourselves after a while, we're way down the path, and this is not the path I wanted to be on.
And it strikes me that we are really good at telling people what our intention isn't. It's like canon in Centers for Spiritual Living that Ernest Holmes never wanted churches, right? I can't tell you how many times I've heard that said. But as you were sharing, Shad, I couldn't think, well, okay, we know that, but what did he want?
Yeah.
What did the Fillmores really, really want? Did they want a campus and a community and a farm that's become the center of the New Thought universe per se, or did they feel like, well, this is working out, so we'll just kind of keep going with it? We don't always know, except I'm sure I trust it's there if we look for it. Yeah. But again, I don't know that too many people go looking for those original intentions. We're sort of caught up in the, yeah, well, but this is my intention.
Right. And what's so fascinating that I've run into time and time again is pulling out a quote from one of our founders, whoever it might be, as a justification for this is what we should do now, without referencing, well, at what point in time did they say that? Where were they in the process of building this organization? And what was the intention behind saying that? So I get the same thing, over and over again. I got it at the CEO. I'm getting it now as I'm launching a church. The Fillmores never wanted a church. But the reality is the Fillmores had a church and ministered in a church for the majority of their adult lives right here in Kansas City and started other churches right here in Kansas City. So to say they didn't intend churches, well, they were in a church. How could you say they didn't intend a church unless they accidentally stumbled onto the platform and accidentally stumbled into a sermon and it's like, well, this is what they did.
And you're going to pay me for this? Sure. Right.
So it's fascinating to really look at the timelines when things were said and really looking at, well, what evolved though? At one point, sure, I think they actually did say, we do not intend to have churches. But then years later, you had all these centers and churches popping up all over the United States. And eventually there's a wing of Uni School Christianity that's created to oversee these centers and churches. And eventually Merlin Charles Fillmore more, because he was still alive, was like, all right, I guess we got to do this thing. These things are everywhere. Meanwhile, he's speaking every Sunday morning in a church. So it's like context and what was going on is really important in these conversations.
Yeah. And I guess one thing that resonates, if you will, is the idea of tradition, right? Where is the dividing line between tradition and modernity, if you will, for lack of a better way of putting it? Because although horse and buggies are still available if someone wants to use that as a mode of transportation, but we also have cars and planes and boats and other modes. And how do you position that? I mean, they're different experiences, obviously, and I wrestle with that myself sometimes of because I think all the organizations get into a whole lot of traditional thinking and traditional ways of doing things. And what's the right mix? I don't know.
I don't know if anybody knows.
I don't know if any of us have the answer to that one. But I think I like where you're going, Z, right? How do we draw a distinction between remaining faithful to the one that brought us? Let's say it that way. How do we remain faithful to the one that brought us, but still also meet people with where they are?
Yes.
Because if we ask a group of 20-year-olds to sit down and take a 10-week class on the history of New Thought and come here read these books by these guys that have been dead for decades, it's a kind of a tough sell in most markets.
Yes.
Not saying you're not going to find some, and you're going to find a handful of people that are, but if you can put that online, and if you can put that into a medium by which they can easily consume that material, where they can easily absorb and start to engage with that material. So I think there's that. I'm kind of with Z. Where do we draw that? And again, I don't think any of us really have that answer. If we did, we'd have 1,000 people in the pulpit and 1,000 people online, right?
Yeah.
I think what the hard part of what we face today is, if we all were standing in the same center, there's an infinite amount of creative ways to point people back to that center. But if we don't know where that center is, and I'm not talking like a physical church center, I'm talking about just a theological center, we don't know what we're pointing them towards. So we're all out saying different things about them. So you can, if we're clear about, all right, this is who started it, this is what they said, this was the intention. Now go do something really creative that helps people find this.
Yeah.
Then it's like, okay, we're holding the anchor for all these ships to be able to go out and do whatever they're going to do and find special people in different ways. But if we don't know where that center is that we're anchored to, now we're just all a bunch of ships washing out into the ocean that never make their way back to the center. So that's a struggle I think we have today. We've lost that center, possibly as New Thought, possibly as Unity, possibly as CSL. I can't speak for anybody, but just from my understanding is that we could do all sorts of creative things for the young people, for the old people, online, in person, if we all understood where that center was. But without that, it's impossible.
Yeah, and you bring up it to my mind the whole situation with Bruce Lee. When Bruce Lee came to this, Bruce Lee never gave up his lineage, right? Which is very traditional in martial arts. You want to go back to the founder. So he never gave up his connection to Yip Man, who taught him Wing Chun. But eventually he stayed with that traditional stuff, but he created his own system, Jeet Kune Do, which had elements of different things, but there were certain elements that were traditional to Wing Chun that he always had in his system. And that's what I kind of hear you saying. If you don't know where you come from, you have no idea where you're going.
Yeah, that's it.
Yep. David Alexander was, Reverend Dr. David Alexander was with us a few weeks back. And in that conversation, and we're talking about his new book, Freedom from Discord, and some of what he's sharing in there. And one of the things he said, and I think it relates exactly to what you're saying, Rev Shad, I don't know that we ever did have a shared center of theology. And because in his book, he's making the case for New Thought to become more of a liberation theology. We know that New Thought can easily become a prosperity theology. And we also know that in the hands of different people, New Thought can have these various forms of theology about them. And what he shared was, we're going to have to get all the leaders together in one room. And he kind of jokingly said, maybe Unity Village, not so jokingly, because there is space and it is centrally located. And I know that from personal experience, both International New Thought Alliance and the affiliated New Thought Network are working towards having those types of conversations, of putting leaders in rooms. And so far, there's been some progress, but it's mighty slow. But the progress, I can see it happening, where we start to develop deeper conversations amongst the leaders, at least, because we're not going to get everybody all on the same ship all at the same time. It's going to take some building, I think.
Yeah.
Well, what's fascinating is, Go ahead.
Go ahead, chat. No, I was just gonna say it's gonna take some conciliation too. I mean, somebody's gonna have to give up something, right?
Mhm.
I mean, if we really believe in this teaching and we think it has what we have, regardless of the different branches on the umbrella, somebody's gonna have to give up something, and that's where the metal will hit the pedal right there.
Yeah, and it's really fascinating. The CEO of Unity Worldwide Ministries asking the questions. What is our identity? Who are we? What is our purpose? Eventually, it came back to the real question is, what is our theology? And who gets to determine what that is? And we really realized since Charles Fillmore passed away, first you had Myrtle, then you had Charles Fillmore pass away. When the founders are gone, who determines what the theology is? Some people don't even want to use the word theology, but I'm going to use the word theology so we know what we're talking about here. Once they pass away, who holds that theology and who reevaluates that theology over time to say, yes, this is alignment with the theology, or this is not alignment with theology, or it needs to adjust this verbiage in this way. We really had no council of elders or voting system or anything in place since the Fillmores were here who laid down the theology. I suspect that's in most of New Thought is when the founder's gone, who oversees that theology? Who's the gatekeeper of that theology?
It becomes in some ways I've seen it where it becomes a power grab, right? Where some are all too willing to step forward and say, I alone have this knowledge and will lead us. And then you've got the leadership by committee example as well that starts to operate, where every word's got to be checked for everything, and we get lost in the analysis of what it is rather than actually living the theology as we know it. You bring forward a lot of good things here, Shad, and a lot of things I think the New Thought movement really needs to look at. My sense is there's a lot of people, however, that don't want to look at these questions. And I'm wondering if you ran into much of that in your travels, and people that wanted to just kind of go along to get along rather than take the deep dive into some of these deeper questions on identity, on values. I agree. We can't know where we're going if we don't know who we are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh no, I absolutely ran into that, and that I was crazy for bringing this stuff up. Like, no, this has been decided. This has been worked out. And I'd say, great. What's the answer? Like, oh, and then they would recite their personal opinion about what unity is, what unity believes. And I'd say, that's great, but I could take this person standing right here, put them in another room and ask them, and it's going to be completely different than what you just said. I don't necessarily agree with what you just said. You find that each individual kind of has their own definition they discern for themselves, and they assume everyone else agrees with that. And then what we also discover is you have different eras of the seminary kind of taught a different version of what unity is. So the ministers that came out of that era, and the licensing teacher that came out of that era go, oh no, it's this. You go, great, hold on. I'm going to grab a minister from this era and then let you two talk. And they go, wait, where did you go to school? Oh, the same place you went to school. Well, that's not, we were taught. Oh, well, that's, and you go, yeah. So it's kind of just these sort of rising and fallings of these different ideas of what it is, depending on the era you were in school or the teacher you had or the dean was there at the time or whoever the president was. And that influence changed over time. So the fascinating thing was when we have these really large meetings to have a conversation, you might have an online meeting of 500 leaders in unity or 300. All of a sudden people are going, what are you talking about? That is not unity. And for them, they're absolutely right. They've never been exposed to what the person next to them thought everyone agreed with. And it was really fascinating to see that unfold.
And that same thing I find happens in Centers for Spiritual Living, because when I first came into the teachings, it was religious science. And that's what attracted me. That very first statement in the book that Ernest says, I look forward to when science and spirituality walk hand in hand from the visible into the invisible. That was my hook. And then it got switched to science of mind. Well, that's something, to me, that's something solely different. And the way it's taught and the way it's presented is totally different. And so.
And now we have CSL, which is even different from science of mind or from religious science. Reverend LZ and I went to school together, and in our time in ministerial school, we had 3 different deans. And I even remember that by the time we were done, and he graduated a year before I did, even by the time we were done, there was that, oh yeah, well, that was during so-and-so, right? I'm not going to throw out names, but that was while so-and-so was here or was in charge or was in. And so can we ever get around something? I mean, that seems like that would be a tough something to change.
Well, there's a consistency that has to be there, right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, standardization is almost a banned word in some wings of New Thought and Unity, or systemized or agreed upon doctrine or theology. But what I recognize and what the staff recognize and the board recognize in this process is I would do exit interviews with our students when they got ordained. I wanted to hear each new minister or licensed teacher, what was your experience? And I literally had some students say, boy, I was glad to get to those Bible classes so I don't ever have to talk about the Bible again. And if you know the Fillmores, I mean, it was Bible from start to finish. And if you just came into the seminary to grin and bear your way through the Bible so that you would never have to talk about it again, something's amiss. And then other students were like, oh yeah, we didn't really talk about the Bible much, and I don't really see the purpose of it. And quickly you realize it's just so hard on the students, because from teacher to teacher, they might have a different perspective on what unity is. And some of the students even said to me, it would take me a couple weeks to figure out this particular teacher's idea of what unity is, so I could write my papers in alignment with what their idea of what unity was. But my next session in the afternoon, that teacher had a completely different idea, and I had to adjust my papers and tests for their idea. And it was really hard to juggle. If I got 6 different teachers, I got 6 different ideas of what unity is, and now I'm trying to piece it all together in some sort of thing to get ordained.
Yeah. And that's interesting, because you can't be, again, we said it earlier, you can't be everything to everybody. And if we hone into that traditional piece, we can't pick and choose what we take. We got to take it all, so you understand. Now, if you want to do some transformation, if you will, after that, but it still has to be based on that foundation. So if someone questions you, you can drill it back down to the fundamental point that is the foundation of unity, of religious science or divine science or whatever it is, so that you at least able to show the lineage of where this thought comes from, and it's been made this way to adapt to a different environment, but it's rooted over here.
Mm-hmm. Hey, folks, as is often happens on this program, we get into such great, deep conversations, we forget to let our sponsors know how much we appreciate them. So we're going to take another quick break, let a couple of those folks say hello, but we're going to be right back with more and our final thoughts for today. Stay with us. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after these messages.
The New Thought Men's community proudly presents New Thought Men's Summit, Foundations, an online conference, September 22nd through 27th. Register today at www.newthoughtmens.community, featuring 22 New Thought speakers, ministers, and visionaries, sharing their wisdom of modern spiritual masculinity. New Thought Men's community, empowering wholeness, centered in spiritual living.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener,
Unity Spiritual Center, Ottawa. Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center. Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living, North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living, Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you, thank you, thank you to all of our organizational sponsors and individual donors. It's thanks to folks like you that we're able to take this message of New Thought out into the world and across the airwaves. Thanks for being with us. All right, before we completely run out of time, because we've been having such a good time, it is time, number one, to say, Shad, thank you so much for being with us. It's grateful for you sharing your time and your vision for the future and a bit about what you're doing in your ministry. So we're going to launch into final thoughts and kick it over to Rev Z to get us started.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that tradition thing, and there's this quote by Gustav Mahler, if I'm pronouncing his name right, that says, tradition is not about worshiping ashes, but about preserving fire, the preservation of fire. And that's what strikes me, is that we're not worshiping ashes. We're trying to preserve the fire that came out of the traditions of each one of these New Thought traditions to change people's lives and make them just better, whole, healed people. And so that's what I'm saying. I'm sticking with it.
Right on. Reverend Shad.
I'm just so appreciative of platforms like this where we can come together and just talk about these ideas and kind of hash out what's going on and have some of these difficult conversations. I think these are exactly the conversations that are going to help us move forward. And I hope that people listening to this kind of get excited, have a spark ignited, start talking to other folks in New Thought to help us find some common ground to move forward with. Because I think there's a lot of power in what's happening here when that energy is focused. And really, it's just the process of focusing that energy so it can do what it's been intentioned to do.
Beautiful. Thank you. Folks, for me, what keeps striking me today is New Thought is in good hands. There are good people that are taking time to consider what the future of New Thought holds and how it's showing up today and how we can make New Thought relevant for anyone that wants to approach this philosophy. And I'm grateful that Rev Shad was able to be with us today, because I've heard some of that I've heard those things that say, oh, he just wants to take us back to the old days. And I'm like, no, I don't think that. I think you ought to have a conversation with the man, because I don't think that's what he's exactly saying. And so it was really great to have you here today and share share a bit about your ministry as it is right now and where it's all taken us. So thanks for being with us. I hope you'll come back again sometime.
Absolutely. Whenever.
We're gonna try to make it less than a year, and you're just gonna have to double up on your dosage of Elzia and I.
Happy to.
Right on. All right, folks. Thanks for being with us. We're out of here for now. Until next time, I want to wish you peace and richest blessings. Bye now.